Captain Daniel Brooks stood at the viewing port of his cargo ship, Aurora's Edge, watching the blue and silver planet grow larger before him. 3 weeks had passed since he pulled Princess Lyra from the burning wreckage of her royal transport. 3 weeks since he had fired his ship's old plasma cannons at the pirate vessels attacking her convoys. 3 weeks since he had become the first human to save a member of the Valarian royal family. Captain were being hailed by planetary control. Lauren Martinez called from the pilots seat. Her dark eyes met his with concern. She'd been his first officer for 5 years and knew him well enough to sense his worry. Daniel turned from the window and moved to the communication console. Put them through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a tall Valarian official with pale blue skin and silver eyes. Captain Brooks, you are cleared for landing at the Imperial spaceport, the official said, his voice formal and cold. A royal escort will meet you upon arrival. Understood. Daniel replied, we'll follow your guidance. The display went dark. Kevin Walsh looked up from the engineering station where he had been monitoring the ship's systems. His red hair was messy as always, and grease stained his uniform. A royal escort, Kevin said with a nervous laugh. Sounds fancy. Sounds like trouble. Lauren muttered. She began the landing sequence, her hands moving quickly over the controls. Daniel couldn't disagree. The message summoning him to Valaria Prime had been brief and formal. It thanked him for saving Princess Lyra, but gave no other details. He had expected a simple ceremony, maybe a medal, then back to his regular cargo runs. But something felt wrong. The ship descended through Valaria Prime's atmosphere. Cities of crystal and metal spread across the continents below, gleaming in the light of twin suns. The Valarian Empire was older than human civilization by thousands of years. Their technology was advanced, their culture complex and layered with traditions. Daniel barely understood. Aurora's Edge touched down on a landing pad that could have held 20 ships its size. Immediately, a formation of royal guards surrounded the vessel. They wore armor that shimmered like liquid silver and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Well, Kevin said, staring at the screen showing the guards outside, that's not intimidating at all. Daniel took a breath and straightened his jacket. It was his best uniform, though it looked plain compared to what he had seen of Valarian fashion. Lauren, Kevin, you're with me. Wouldn't miss it. Lauren said. The three of them walked to the airlock. The ramp extended with a hiss. Warm air rushed in, carrying scents of exotic flowers and something else, something like ozone and starlight. The bottom of the ramp stood a Valarian woman in robes of deep purple. Her skin was the color of twilight, and her eyes were ancient. Captain Brooks, she said, bowing slightly, I am Ambassador Thera. I will escort you to the Imperial Palace. Daniel and his crew descended the ramp up close. He could see the guards more clearly. Each one stood perfectly still, their faces hidden behind helmets. Thank you for the welcome, Daniel said. He tried to sound calm, though his heart was beating faster. Ambassador Thera turned and began walking toward a transport vehicle that floated silently nearby. The Empress wishes to see you immediately. The Empress? Daniel repeated. He had assumed he would meet with some lower official. Maybe see Princess Lyra briefly. Empress Seraphine herself has requested your presence. Thera confirmed. This is a great honor. Lauren caught Daniel's ire. Expression said what they were both thinking. This didn't feel like an honor. It felt like a trial. The transport carried them through the capital city. Buildings rose like frozen waterfalls of crystal. Valarians moved through the streets in flowing garments, their movements graceful everywhere Daniel looked. He saw beauty and order. The Imperial Palace dominated the city center. It was massive, built from white stone that seemed to glow from within. Towers reached toward the sky, and bridges of light connected different sections. Gardens filled with alien plants, surrounded the structure. The palace has stood for 10,000 years. Thera said as they approached. It has never fallen to any enemy. The transport stopped at the main entrance. More guards waited. Along with servants in simple gray robes, Daniel, Lauren, and Kevin followed Thera through corridors decorated with tapestries showing Valarian history. They passed rooms filled with art and artifacts from countless worlds. Finally, they reached a set of enormous doors carved with symbols Daniel couldn't read. Beyond these doors is the throne room. Thera said. She turned to face Daniel. The Empress will ask you questions. Answer truthfully. Do not try to deceive her. She has ruled for 300 years and can sense lies as easily as you can see light. I have no reason to lie. Daniel said, I only did what anyone would do. Something that might have been surprise crossed Thera's face. That is precisely why you are here. Captain. The doors opened. The throne room stretched before them like a cathedral. Hundreds of Valarian nobles lined the walls, dressed in colors that shimmered and changed. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a throne carved from a single piece of black crystal, and upon that throne sat Empress Seraphine. She was tall, even seated. Her skin a deep violet that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect. Her eyes were silver like stars, and her hair flowed down her back in waves of midnight blue. A crown of what looked like frozen starlight rested on her head. She radiated power, not the kind that came from weapons or armies, but something deeper, something that made Daniel understand why the Valarian Empire had endured for millennia. Approach. Her voice rang out across the vast room. Was beautiful and terrible at once. Daniel walked forward. Lauren and Kevin followed a few steps behind the nobles, watched in silence. Every eye in the room tracked the three humans as they crossed the polished floor. Daniel stopped at the base of the platform. He wasn't sure if he should bow or kneel or simply stand. He chose to stand straight, meeting the Empress's gaze for a long moment. Seraphine studied him. Her silver eyes seemed to look through him, reading every thought and memory. You are Captain Daniel Brooks, she finally said. The human who saved my daughter. Yes. Your Majesty. Tell me, Seraphine continued. Why did you intervene? You had no alliance with our empire. You gained nothing from helping her. You risked your ship and crew to fight pirates who would have happily killed you. Why? Daniel thought about the question. He remembered seeing the attack on his scanners, watching the pirate ships tear into the royal convoy. He remembered making the decision without really thinking about it, because she needed help. He said simply, because I can help her. Because it was the right thing to do. Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Seraphine's expression didn't change. The right thing, she repeated. You speak of morality as if it is absolute, as if right and wrong exist beyond culture and law, don't they? Daniel asked. The murmurs grew louder. Lauren tensed beside him, but Seraphine raised a hand and silence fell instantly. An interesting answer, the Empress said, and one that has created an interesting problem. She rose from her throne. The movement was fluid and commanding. Every person in the room seemed to lean forward slightly. By saving my daughter's life, Captain Brooks, you have created a debt according to ancient Valarian law, a life debt that cannot be ignored. Princess Lyra cannot marry, cannot make treaties, cannot fulfill her royal duties until this debt is satisfied. Daniel felt cold despite the warm air. I don't understand. I didn't save her to create problems. I know. Seraphine said, that is what makes this situation so complicated. The Galactic Council is demanding answers. They say you violated non-interference protocols. My daughter's betrothed demands satisfaction. And she paused, her silver eyes boring into him. I must uphold the law or watch my empire crumble. What do you want me to do? Daniel asked. I offer you a choice, Seraphine declared, a voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. Accept execution for your interference in imperial affairs, or compete in the trial of worth. If you succeed, the debt is satisfied. If you fail, you die. But either way, the law is upheld. Daniel heard Lauren gasp behind him. Kevin muttered something under his breath. The nobles watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to satisfaction. Daniel looked up at the Empress. She stood like a statue, beautiful and unmovable. But in her eyes, he thought he saw something else. Not cruelty, but duty, not hatred, but burden. How long do I have to decide? He asked. You will answer now, Seraphine said. The throne room fell silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. He thought of his crew, his ship, the life he had built. He thought of Princess Lyra, who he had saved without hesitation, and he thought about what kind of person he wanted to be. I choose the trial, he said clearly. Seraphine nodded slowly. So be it. The trial of worth will begin in 3 days. May whatever gods you believe in grant you strength. Captain Brooks, you will need it. The doors behind Daniel opened again. Guards moved forward to escort them out as he turned to leave. Daniel caught a glimpse of movement in one of the high galleries. A young Valerian woman with pale, lavender skin stood there, Princess Lyra, even from this distance. He could see tears on her face. Then the guards led him away, and the throne room disappeared from view. The quarters they assigned to Daniel and his crew were beautiful. They felt like a cave's tall windows looked out over the palace gardens, where alien flowers bloomed in colors that had no names in English. The rooms were spacious, filled with furniture that adjusted to their bodies, and servants brought food that tasted like dreams. But guards stood outside the doors, and Daniel knew they were not free to leave. This is insane, Kevin said for the 10th time. He paced back and forth across the main room, his boots silent on the soft floor. They can't just force you into some ancient trial. We should contact Earth. Get a diplomatic team involved. Lauren sat by the window, her arms crossed. Earth is 6 months away by standard travel, she said quietly. Even if they sent help immediately, Daniel would be dead before anyone arrived. Daniel stood at the window, watching the twin suns set the sky turn purple and gold, colors blending in ways that never happened on Earth. I made my choice, he said. Now I need to understand what I'm facing. Soft chimes sounded at the door. The 3 humans looked at each other. Enter. Daniel called. The door slid open. Ambassador Thera stepped inside, her purple robes flowing around her. Behind her came 2 servants carrying what looked like books, though they glowed with soft light. I bring information about the trial of worth, Thera said. She gestured to the servants, who placed the glowing objects on a table and left. The Empress thought you should understand what you have agreed to. Daniel moved closer to the table. The glowing books, or whatever they were, pulsed. Gently. Tell me. Thera touched one of the objects, and it projected an image into the air. It showed a massive arena surrounded by crowds. The trial of worth has 3 parts. She began: combat, wisdom, and sacrifice. Each test is designed to prove that you are worthy of the life debt you have created. What happens in the combat trial? Lauren asked. She had joined Daniel at the table. The holographic image changed, showing warriors fighting with various weapons. You will face a champion chosen by the Empress, Thera explained. The fight continues until one of you yields or dies. Weapons are provided, but you may use your own if you prefer. And wisdom? Daniel asked. A test of the mind, Thera said. The image shifted to show a chamber filled with puzzles and strange devices. You must solve the riddle of ages, a puzzle that has been used in the trial for over 1,000 years. Many strong warriors have failed here. Strength of arm means nothing if the mind is weak. Kevin leaned forward, studying the holographic puzzle. Has anyone ever solved it? Yes, Thera said. But rarely. Those who fail are executed immediately. The air in the room seemed to grow colder, and the sacrifice? Daniel asked, what does that involve? Thera's expression became unreadable. That is the final test. And its nature changes each time. The Empress herself designs it. I cannot tell you what it will be, because I do not know. But I can tell you this, no one has passed all 3 trials in over a century. Silence filled the room Lauren's face had. Gone pale, Kevin stopped pacing and stared at the holographic images. Then why did you offer me this choice? Daniel asked, why not just execute me? Because the law requires it, Thera said, and because, she paused, choosing her words carefully. The Empress is not cruel. She gives everyone a chance. Even if that chance is small, that's supposed to make us feel better? Kevin asked sharply. Thera looked at him with those ancient eyes. No. She said simply, it is supposed to help you understand. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Captain Brooks, may I ask you something? Go ahead. When you saved Princess Lyra, did you know who she was? Daniel thought back to that moment, the burning ship, the distress signal, the pirates closing in. No, he admitted. I just saw someone who needed help. Thera nodded slowly. That is what I thought. She left, the door closing softly behind her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Lauren turned to Daniel. We need a plan. The combat trial, you were military before you became a traitor. You know how to fight. That was years ago. Daniel said, but he appreciated her confidence, and I was never the best fighter. I got by on tactics and endurance, not strength. Then we use that, Lauren insisted. We study the arena, find advantages. What about the wisdom test? Kevin asked. He was examining the holographic puzzle. This thing looks impossible. Maybe. Daniel said. He moved closer to study at the puzzle. Was a complex arrangement of symbols and moving parts, but something about it seemed familiar. Or maybe it's designed to seem impossible. What do you mean? Thera said many strong warriors fail here. Daniel explained. Warriors, people who think in terms of force and direct action. But what if the solution isn't complex? What if it's simple and everyone overthinks it? Lauren smiled slightly. That's very human of you. That's kind of the point. Daniel said. They've never had a human take this trial before. They don't know how we think, how we solve problems. That might be our only advantage. A different chime sounded. This one, urgent and bright. All 3 of them turned toward the window outside. A small figure moved through the garden, even in the growing darkness. Daniel recognized her. Princess Lyra. She was alone, moving quickly between the strange trees. She looked up at their window and made a gesture. Follow me. The guards, Kevin started, are at the door, not the window. Lauren finished. She was already examining the window's mechanism. And I bet the Empress doesn't expect humans to climb down palace walls. Daniel looked at the drop. 3 stories. But there were decorative elements on the building that could serve as handholds. This is a terrible idea, he said, but he opened the window. To climb down was harder than it looked. The decorative elements were beautiful, but not designed for climbing. Daniel's fingers ached by the time he dropped into the garden. Lauren came next. Then Kevin, who nearly fell twice. Princess Lyra waited for them in the shadows up close. Daniel could see she was younger than he had thought, maybe 20 in human years. Her lavender skin seemed to glow faintly in the starlight. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice urgent. Neither should you, Your Highness, Daniel replied. They're watching me constantly, Lyra said, but I know the gardens. I grew up here. Please, follow me. We don't have much time. She led them through paths that wound between alien plants. Some of the flowers turned to watch them. Past others released sweet scents that made Daniel's head spin slightly. They reached a small pavilion hidden by hanging vines. Lyra gestured for them to sit. I had to see you, she said. I had to tell you, this is wrong. The trial, The life debt, all of it. It's tradition, Daniel said gently. Sometimes traditions serve a purpose. Not this one. Lyra interrupted. Her silver eyes flashed with emotion. This tradition was made in a different age. When the Empire was at war, it was meant to prevent enemies from claiming favor through false heroism. But you're not an enemy. You saved me because you're good, not because you wanted something. She turned to pace, her movements agitated. My mother knows this. Everyone knows this. But the Galactic Council is using it against us. They want to weaken the Empire. So they're demanding strict adherence to old laws. And my mother, she's trapped between what's right and what's necessary. Daniel began to understand. The Empress doesn't want to do this. No, Lyra confirmed. But if she breaks the law for you, it sets a precedent. Other laws can be challenged. The whole structure of imperial authority could collapse. So I'm the sacrifice that keeps the system stable. Daniel said. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. When you saved me, I thought humans must be the kindest people in the galaxy. And now you're going to die because of me. I'm not dead yet. Daniel said. He tried to sound confident. Maybe I'll surprise everyone. No one has passed the trial in over 100 years. Lyra said. The last person who tried was a Kroger warrior, one of the strongest species in the galaxy. He defeated the combat champion easily. He solved the wisdom puzzle in under an hour. But the sacrifice, she shook her head. My mother asked him to choose between his own freedom and saving a criminal's life. He chose freedom. He failed. Lauren leaned forward. What happened to him? He was executed. Lyra whispered in front of the entire court. Silence fell over the pavilion. Daniel thought about what Lyra had said. The sacrifice wasn't about strength or intelligence. It was about character, about what someone would give up for others. Your Highness, Kevin said suddenly, you said the Galactic Council is using this situation. What do they gain? Lyra wiped her eyes. Humanity is new to galactic politics. Young species often align with the Empire because we're stable and fair. But if the Empire executes a human for saving an imperial princess, that sends a message. It makes us look cruel and bound by meaningless tradition. It drives new species toward the Council instead. Politics. Lauren said bitterly. Daniel stood and walked to the edge of the pavilion above. The stars of the Valarian sky shone bright. Somewhere up there was Earth, home to billions of humans who had no idea their future in the galaxy might depend on what happened in the next few days. I need to pass this trial, he said quietly. Not even just for me. Not even just for you, Princess. But because if I fail, it confirms everything the Council wants people to believe. It says humans aren't ready, aren't worthy. Lyra joined him. I'll help however I can. I'll tell you everything I know about the trials. About the arena? No, Daniel interrupted. You've already risked too much coming here. If they catch you helping me, it could make things worse. But he's right, Lauren said. She stood as well. The morning of the trial arrived too quickly. Daniel stood in a preparation chamber beneath the arena, listening to the roar of thousands of spectators above. Sound vibrated through the stone walls like distant thunder. Lauren helped him check his equipment. The trial allowed him to wear light armor and carry one weapon. He had chosen a simple combat knife. Nothing fancy. Just a tool he knew how to use. Remember, Lauren said as she adjusted the straps on his armor. You're not trying to overpower anyone. You're trying to outlast them. Humans are built for endurance. I know, Daniel said. They had spent the last 3 days preparing. Kevin had analyzed every recording of past trials he could access. Lauren had drilled Daniel on tactics and movement, and Daniel had tried not to think about the fact that he was probably going to die. The wisdom test. Kevin said. He had been pacing the small chamber. I still think the solution is simpler than it looks. Trust your instincts. Don't overthink it. And the sacrifice? Daniel asked. Kevin and Lauren exchanged glances. They had no answer for that. No one? knew what the Empress would ask. A horn sounded above. The crowd noise changed, becoming more focused. "It's time," a voice said from the doorway. Ambassador Thera stood there, her expression carefully neutral. "The Empress waits." Daniel took a deep breath. He looked at his crew, his friends. "If I don't make it, don't." Lauren said firmly, "Just don't. You're going to be fine." She didn't believe it, neither did Kevin, but Daniel appreciated the lie. He followed Thera through a tunnel that sloped upward. Sound of the crowd grew louder with each step. Then he stepped out into blazing light. The arena was enormous. Circular tiers rose up on all sides, filled with thousands of beings from dozens of species. Banners in imperial colors hung from tall poles. In the center of the arena stood a raised platform, and on a throne overlooking everything sat Empress Seraphine. She wore armor today, not for battle, but ceremonial. It was black as space and seemed to drink in light. Her crown caught the sun and threw rainbows across the sand. "Captain Daniel Brooks." Her voice rang out, amplified somehow to fill the entire arena. "You stand accused of creating a life debt through unauthorized intervention in imperial affairs. You have chosen trial by ordeal to satisfy this debt. Do you understand the terms?" "I do, Your Majesty." Daniel called back. His voice sounded small compared to hers. "Then let the trial of worth begin," Seraphine declared. First combat. A gate on the opposite side of the arena opened. What emerged made Daniel's heart sink. The Kroger warrior was massive, at least 8 feet tall. With 4 arms and skin like armored plates, its eyes glowed red, and when it roared, the sound shook the air. The crowd cheered. "You will fight until one yields or falls," Seraphine announced. "Begin." The Kroger charged it, moved fast despite its size, covering the distance in seconds. All 4 arms held weapons, axes, and blades that gleamed in the sunlight. Daniel rolled to the side, barely avoiding the first strike. Sand exploded where he had been standing. The crowd roared approval. Daniel came up. Running, he couldn't match the Kroger's strength. That was suicide. But he could move. The creature turned with surprising speed and attacked. Again, Daniel ducked under a horizontal slash. Feeling the blade pass inches above his head, he lashed out with his knife. Aiming for the joints in the Kroger's armor, the blade scraped across thick hide but didn't penetrate. The Kroger backhanded him with one massive fist. Daniel flew backward, hitting the sand. Hard pain exploded across his ribs. He forced himself to roll as weapons smashed into the ground where he had landed. "Get up," he told himself. Move. The Kroger was relentless. It attacked with all 4 arms in a pattern that left no opening. Daniel backed away, breathing hard. His ribs screamed with every breath. But he noticed something. The creature was strong and fast, but it fought in a pattern. Upper right, lower left, both middle arms together. Repeat. Warriors trained to fight probably learned to counter that pattern, but Daniel wasn't a trained warrior. He was a cargo ship captain who had survived through pragmatism. So instead of countering, he adapted. When the upper right arm swung, Daniel went low. When the middle arm struck together, he went sideways. He wasn't trying to win, he was trying not to lose. Minutes passed. The Kroger's breathing became heavier. Those massive muscles required massive amounts of energy. Daniel's endurance training on Earth's high gravity had prepared him for this, not for victory, but for survival. The crowd's cheering changed. People began to notice that the small human was still standing. The Kroger roared in frustration. It abandoned its pattern and charged wildly. That was the mistake Daniel had been waiting for. He stepped inside the creature's reach and drove his knife into the joint where the lower left arm met the body. The Basi blade slipped between armor plates. The Kroger howled. It swept all 4 arms inward, trying to crush Daniel, but Daniel was already gone. Rolling away, the creature looked at its wounded arm. Dark blood dripped into the sand. It looked at Daniel with new respect. Then it raised all 4 weapons and charged again. This time, Daniel stood his ground at the last possible second. He dropped flat. The Kroger's momentum carried it forward. Stumbling over the human, Daniel sprang up and drove his knife into the back of the creature's knee. It collapsed with a cry of pain. Daniel moved behind it. Knife at the Kroger's throat. Yield, he said, breathing hard. The crowd had gone silent. The Kroger's muscles tensed for a moment. Daniel thought it would keep fighting, then it lowered its weapons. I yield. The creature rumbled. The arena erupted in sound. Daniel stepped back, nearly falling. His whole body shook with exhaustion. The first trial is complete. Empress Seraphine's voice rang out. The human has proven his combat worth. Take him to the Chamber of Wisdom. Guards appeared and helped the Kroger to its feet. The creature looked at Daniel and nodded once. Warrior, the warrior. Then it limped away. Daniel barely noticed his legs felt like water. Someone handed him water, and he drank gratefully. Then they led him to another part of the arena. The Chamber of Wisdom was a dome-shaped room with walls covered in symbols. In the center stood the puzzle Thera had shown him. It was even more complex in person. Pieces moved in seemingly random patterns. Lights flickered on and off. Symbols appeared and disappeared. You have 1 hour, a voice announced. Solve the riddle of ages or face execution. The door sealed behind him. Daniel approached the puzzle slowly. His mind was still foggy from the fight focus. He told himself, Kevin said it was probably simpler than it looked. Thera said, warriors failed here. Warriors, people who thought in terms of force and direct solutions. Daniel studied the puzzle, the moving pieces, the lights, the symbols. What if it wasn't really a puzzle at all? What if it was a test of patience? He sat down in front of it and watched. The pieces moved, the lights flickered, the symbols changed. But underneath the chaos, there was a pattern, not in what moved, but in what didn't move. 3 symbols remained constant, always in the same positions, always showing the same shapes while everything else shifted and changed. These 3 stayed still. Daniel reached out and pressed all 3 symbols simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire puzzle went dark. The door behind him opened. The second trial is complete, the voice announced. The human has proven his wisdom. Daniel stood on shaking legs. 2 trials down, 1 to go, and no idea what was coming. Guards escorted him back into the main arena. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the sand. Empress Seraphine rose from her throne. The crowd fell completely silent. Captain Brooks, she said. Her voice was different now, not amplified, but somehow more personal. You have shown strength and wisdom. Now comes the final test, the test of sacrifice. She gestured, and another gate opened. 2 figures were led into the arena. Daniel's blood ran cold. One was a Valerian in chains, clearly a prisoner. The other was Princess Lyra. The prisoner, Seraphine said, is the pirate captain who led the attack on my daughter's convoy. He is condemned to death for his crimes. She paused. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. You may choose. The Empress continued. Save this criminal's life and forfeit your own freedom. You will serve the Empire as a slave for the rest of your days, or choose your freedom and watch justice be done. Both are acceptable under the law. Daniel looked at the pirate captain. The alien's eyes were hard, showing no remorse. This was the being who had tried to kill Lyra, who would have killed Daniel too. Without hesitation, Your Majesty, Daniel said, his voice carried across the silent arena. May I propose a third option? Seraphine's eyes narrowed. The trial does not permit. I know. Daniel interrupted. He knew he was breaking protocol, possibly signing his death warrant, but he had to try. But hear me out. This pirate captain, his crew, were they all willing participants? Seraphine seemed surprised by the question. Intelligence reports indicate most were slaves themselves, taken from conquered worlds. Then I offer this, Daniel said. Execute the pirate captain as justice demands, but let me take his place as the sacrifice, not as a slave to the Empire, but as an advocate for those he enslaved. Let his death free them, and let me ensure they find new lives. The crowd erupted in voices. Even Seraphine looked stunned. Princess Lyra's face showed hope and fear at once. You would choose to save slavers? Someone shouted from the crowd. No, Daniel called back. I would choose to save slaves. There's a difference. He turned back to the Empress. I failed to save one person once before. In my military career, that failure has haunted me. I can't change the past, but maybe I can change someone's future. Seraphine descended from her throne. She walked across the sand until the arena fell into chaos. Nobles shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some cheered Daniel's victory, while others demanded that Empress Seraphine reject his solution. The Galactic Council observers stood in their viewing box, clearly furious, but Seraphine raised her hand and silence gradually returned. The life debt is satisfied, she said firmly. The law is upheld. Captain Brooks has proven himself worthy through combat, wisdom, and sacrifice. She looked at the pirate captain, who stood trembling in his chains. You will face justice for your crimes, she told him, but your former slaves will be freed and given support to rebuild their lives. Captain Brooks will oversee this process. 2 guards led the pirate away. He didn't struggle. Seemingly broken by what had just happened, Princess Lyra ran across the sand and threw her arms around Daniel. You did it, she whispered. I can't believe you did it. Daniel was too exhausted to do more than pat her shoulder. Awkwardly, his ribs still hurt, his legs were shaking, and his mind felt foggy. I need to sit down, he mumbled. Lauren and Kevin rushed into the arena, supporting him on both sides. The crowd was already dispersing, still arguing among themselves. Seraphine watched from her throne, her expression unreadable that night. Daniel slept for 12 hours straight. When he woke, he found Ambassador Thera waiting in the main room of their quarters. The Empress requests your presence, Thera said. When you are ready. Daniel showered and dressed in clean clothes. His ribs were badly bruised but not broken. The palace medical staff had given him something that reduced the pain. Lauren and Kevin wanted to come with him, but Thera shook her head. The Empress wishes to speak with Captain Brooks alone. She led him through different corridors this time. These were quieter, more private. They passed fewer guards and no other nobles. Finally, they reached a simple door. The Empress's private study. Thera said, enter when ready. Then she left him alone. Daniel knocked. Come in. Seraphine's voice called. The room beyond was nothing like the throne room. It was smaller, filled with books and artifacts. One wall was completely transparent. Looking out over the palace gardens, Empress Seraphine stood by the window, wearing simple robes instead of her armor, without the crown and ceremonial dress. She looked different, still powerful, still ancient, but somehow more approachable. Please sit, she said. Gesturing to a chair, Daniel sat. His whole body still ached. Seraphine poured 2 glasses of something that shimmered like liquid light. She handed one to Daniel and took the other herself. To your health, Captain Brooks, she said. You gave me quite the spectacle yesterday. Daniel sipped the drink. It tasted like starlight in summer. I just did what felt right. Your Majesty, that seems to be your defining characteristic, Seraphine said. She sat in the chair across from him. Do you know how many people have taken the trial of worth in the last 1,000 years? Daniel shook his head. 347, she said. Do you know how many passed? You're the second. Daniel nearly dropped his glass. The second? But Princess Lyra said no one had passed in over a century. No one had. Seraphine confirmed. The last person to pass was 800 years ago. A Solarian mystic who redefined what wisdom meant. Until you. He was the last to complete all 3 trials. She took a sip of her drink. And he did not do what you did. He did not challenge the very nature of the test itself. I didn't mean to disrespect the tradition, Daniel said quickly. Seraphine laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Disrespect? You honored it more than anyone in centuries. The trial of worth was never meant to be a test of strength alone. It was meant to find beings who could think beyond themselves, who could see new solutions to old problems. She stood and walked to the window. My empire is old. Captain Brooks, older than your species, has had language. And with age comes rigidity. We hold to our traditions because they have served us well. But sometimes, she paused, sometimes traditions become prisons. Daniel joined her at the window in the garden below. Princess Lyra walked among the flowers. The Galactic Council wanted me to fail. Daniel said. They wanted to make an example. Yes. Seraphine admitted. The Council fears the Empire's influence. They hoped your execution would drive a wedge between humanity and us. Instead, your victory has done the opposite. She turned to face him fully. I must confess something to you. Captain, I did not want to offer you the trial. I wanted to simply pardon you and deal with the political consequences. But my advisors convinced me that would be seen as weakness, so I offered you a choice I believed you could not. Survive. Her silver eyes showed genuine regret. I'm sorry for that. Daniel thought about the arena. The Kroger warrior, the puzzle, the impossible choice. Why did you make the final test what it was? He asked. You could have asked me to choose between my life and saving a stranger. That's what happened in the previous trial. True, Seraphine said, but you had already proven your character by saving Lyra. I knew you would. Sacrifice yourself for others. What I needed to know was whether you could see beyond the obvious choice. Whether you could find a third path when given only two options. And did I? Daniel asked. Seraphine smiled. You not only found a third path, you created one that benefits everyone except yourself. You gain nothing from your solution. The slaves gain freedom. The Empire gains justice. But you still carry the burden of ensuring those former slaves find new lives. It's a responsibility that will take years. I know, Daniel said simply, but someone has to do it, and I made the offer. Seraphine studied him for a long moment. Your species is young. She finally said, barely a century in space. Most young species are arrogant or afraid. They either push too hard or hide too much. But humans. She shook her head. Humans are different. You carry kindness as naturally as you carry breath. That is rare in the galaxy. We're not all like that. Daniel said, I've met plenty of humans who are selfish or cruel, of course. Seraphine agreed. No species is monolithic. But your culture, your stories, your values, they emphasize protecting the weak and helping those in need. That shapes even your worst members. She returned to her chair. I am going to make you an offer, Captain Brooks, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Daniel sat down as well. I'm listening. The Galactic Council is powerful, but the Empire is old and respected. If I were to propose that humanity join the Council as full members, sponsored by the Empire, it would carry weight. Other species would support it. Within a year, humans would have a voice in galactic affairs. Daniel's heart began to race. That's enormous. That would change everything for my people. Yes, Seraphine said, but it comes with a cost. I need someone to bridge our cultures. Someone who understands both human values and imperial traditions. I am offering you the position of Imperial Ambassador for Human Affairs. Daniel sat back in his chair. Me? I'm a cargo ship captain. I'm not a diplomat. You are exactly what I need. Seraphine said, diplomats are trained in deception and compromise. You are trained in honesty and direct action. You will make mistakes, certainly. You will offend people, probably, but you will always act from a place of genuine care for others. That is worth more than all the diplomatic training in the galaxy. She leaned forward. Your crew can stay with you. You would have resources, support, protection. and you would help shape how humanity integrates into galactic society. What about the former slaves? Daniel asked. The ones from the pirate ship? They will be your first responsibility, Seraphine said. Consider it a test of your new role. If you can successfully help them transition to freedom and new lives, it will prove that humans can be trusted with larger responsibilities. Daniel thought about Lauren and Kevin about his ship. Aurora's Edge about the quiet life he had, built carrying cargo between stations. Then he thought about Princess Lyra's tears, about the slaves waiting for freedom, about the chance to help his entire species find its place among the stars. Can I ask my crew what they think? Of course, Seraphine said. Take all the time you need. She stood, indicating the meeting was over. Daniel stood as well. Your Majesty, he said. Thank you. For what? She asked. For giving me the chance to prove myself, even if you thought I would fail. Seraphine's smile was warm. Captain Brooks, I have ruled for 300 years. In that time, I have learned that the most valuable thing a leader can do is be proven wrong. Your success yesterday taught me that humans are ready for the galaxy, and perhaps that the galaxy is ready for humans. She walked him to the door. There is one more thing, she said. Lyra wants to work with you on helping the former slaves. She has been sheltered her whole life. She needs to see the galaxy beyond the palace walls, and I believe you can teach her things I cannot. If that's what she wants, Daniel said, I would be honored. Good, Seraphine said then. More quietly, she added, take care of my daughter. Captain, she sees you as a hero. Try to live up to that. Daniel left the study feeling the weight of impossible expectations, but also feeling something else. Hope. He found Lauren and Kevin in the garden. They were talking with Princess Lyra, who was showing them some of the exotic plants. So, Lauren asked when she saw Daniel's face, what did the Empress want? Daniel told them everything. Kevin whistled low. Ambassador? That's insane. I know, Daniel agreed. But what do you think? Lauren looked at him seriously. I think we followed you out here because we believe in you. If you want to do this, we're with you, even if it means giving up the ship. Daniel asked the Aurora's Edge. 6 months had passed since Daniel became Imperial Ambassador for Human Affairs. The transformation had been overwhelming. At first, learning Imperial protocols, understanding galactic politics, navigating the complex web of alliances and rivalries that made up the civilized galaxy. But Daniel had learned, and more importantly, he had stayed true to himself. The former slaves from the pirate ship had been his first major project. 43 beings from 12 different species, all traumatized, all uncertain about freedom. Daniel had worked with each one personally. He found them jobs, education, counseling. He used Imperial resources, but never forced anyone into anything. Some chose to return to their home worlds. Others decided to stay in the Empire and build new lives. One, a young Talaxian engineer named Kess, had even joined Daniel's staff today. Was important for a different reason. The Galactic Council was meeting to vote on humanity's admission as a full member species. Daniel stood in the embassy's main office, adjusting his formal uniform. It was a blend of human and Valerian styles, respectful of both cultures. Lauren entered, carrying a datapad, the latest polls from council members. She said, "It's going to be close." Daniel took the pad and reviewed the numbers. 42 species made up the council. They needed a simple majority, 22 votes right now. They had 19 confirmed, 17 against, and 6 undecided. The Dravian delegation is still on the fence, Lauren said. They're worried about human military capabilities. After Earth's last war, they think we're too aggressive. Daniel nodded. He had heard this concern before. Humanity's history was full of conflict. Other species saw that as a warning sign. What about the Selkath? He asked. They're concerned about human emotionalism. Lauren replied. They think we make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. And the Zarathi? They haven't said. Lauren admitted. Their ambassador refuses to meet with us. Daniel set down the datapad. And I guess I'll have to change their minds in person. The vote is in 3 hours. Kevin called from across the room. He was monitoring the communication channels. You don't have time to meet with anyone. I don't need to meet with all of them. Daniel said, just the right ones. He turned to Princess Lyra, who had been quietly listening from a corner of the office over the past 6 months. She had become an invaluable part of his team. Her knowledge of galactic politics and her genuine care for others made her perfect for this work. Lyra, can you arrange a meeting with the Dravian ambassador? He asked. In the next hour? She smiled. Already done. I sent the request this morning. He's waiting for you in the garden pavilion. Daniel shouldn't have been surprised Lyra had developed an instinct for this work. What about the Selkath? He asked. They agreed to speak with you via holoconference in 30 minutes, Lyra said. And the Zorathi? Her smile faded slightly. They still refuse. Then I'll deal with them later. Daniel decided, first things first. The meeting with the Dravian ambassador took place under the same pavilion where Lyra had first warned Daniel about the trial ambassador. Thane was a tall being with scaled skin and eyes that saw in multiple spectrums. Ambassador Brooks, he said formally, thank you for meeting with me. The honor is mine. Ambassador Thane. Daniel replied. He sat across from the Dravian. I understand you have concerns about humanity's military nature. Thane's scales rippled a sign of discomfort. Your species has fought more wars in your recorded history than most species fight in 10 times that span. Your planet is divided into competing nations, each with its own military. How can we trust that humans won't bring that conflict to the stars? Daniel had expected this question. He had prepared careful diplomatic answers, but sitting there, looking at Thane's genuine worry, he decided on honesty instead. You can't, he said. Simply Thane's scales went still. Excuse me? You can't trust that humans will never fight, Daniel said. We probably will. We're young. We're passionate. We make mistakes. But here's what you can trust. We also know how to make peace. Every one of those wars you mentioned ended. Every division between our nations has been bridged at some point. We fight, yes. But we also forgive. We hold grudges, but we also let them go. He leaned forward. Ambassador, the galaxy is full of species that never fight because they never care enough about anything to fight for it. And it's full of species that only know how to fight and never how to stop. Humans are different. We feel everything intensely: anger, love, fear, hope. That makes us dangerous, but it also makes us capable of change. Thane was quiet for a long moment. The Empress vouches for you, he finally said. That carries weight, but it's not enough. What would be enough? Daniel asked. Thane's scale shifted to a color Daniel had learned meant thoughtfulness. Show me that humans can choose peace when war would be easier. Give me proof. Daniel thought about the trial, about choosing to save the pirates' victims instead of choosing simple revenge. I can't give you absolute proof, he admitted. No one can prove what they'll do in every future situation. But I can tell you what happened 6 months ago. He told Thane about the trial, about the choices he had made, not bragging, just explaining. Thane listened without interrupting. You could have chosen revenge, Thane said when Daniel finished. The Empire would have executed the pirate captain Airway, but you chose to help his victims instead, because revenge doesn't fix anything. Daniel said, it just creates more pain. Helping the victims that actually changes something. Thane stood. I will consider your words. Ambassador Brooks, and I will watch the vote carefully. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a rejection. Either Daniel would take it. The holoconference with the Selkath ambassador went differently. Ambassador Oren appeared as a shimmering projection, their crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns. You wish to address our concerns about human emotionalism. Oren stated no pleasantries, no small talk. The Selkath were a logical species. I do, Daniel said. Tell me, Ambassador Oren, why do you make decisions? The question clearly surprised the Selkath. To achieve optimal outcomes based on available data, and when the data is incomplete or contradictory, we gather more data or apply probability analysis. Daniel nodded. Humans do something similar, but we also use emotion as data. Oren's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been confusion. Emotion is not data. It's biochemical responses that cloud judgment. Sometimes. Daniel agreed, but emotion is also information about what matters. When I saved Princess Lyra, logic would have said to stay out of it. Getting involved risked my ship, my crew, my life. The logical choice was to ignore the situation. Precisely, Oren said. Your emotional response overrode logic. No, Daniel countered. My emotional response gave me information that logic couldn't. It told me that some things are worth more than personal safety, that some choices define who you are. Logic can tell you the most efficient path, but emotion tells you which path you can live with. He could see Oren processing this. You're saying emotion and logic should work together? I'm saying they already do, Daniel said. Every species makes decisions based on values that come from somewhere deeper than pure logic. You value optimal outcomes. That's an emotional choice. You could value chaos or suffering instead. Logic alone doesn't tell you what to optimize for. Oren was silent for a long time. This is an interesting perspective. They finally said, I will need time to consider it. The projection fatal Oren had been listening from the doorway. That was impressive, she said. Did it work? I don't know, Daniel admitted, but it was honest, and that's all I can offer. 2 hours later, Daniel stood in the observation gallery above the council chamber. Lauren and Kevin flanked him. Princess Lyra stood nearby with Ambassador Therabolo. Representatives from 42 species gathered around a circular table. Each had a vote. Each would decide humanity's future. Empress Seraphine entered the chamber as the sponsor of humanity's application. She would speak first. Members of the Galactic Council. Her voice rang out. We gathered to decide whether humanity should join us as equals. This is not a small decision. The human species is young, impulsive, emotional. They make mistakes. They fight among themselves. They sometimes choose passion over logic. Daniel felt his stomach drop. This wasn't the endorsement he had expected, but Seraphine continued. They're also kind, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary growth. In the 6 months since humanity gained an ambassador, I have watched them learn and change. I have seen them help species they have no alliance with. I have watched them find creative solutions to ancient problems. And I have witnessed them choose mercy when revenge would be easier. She gestured to the gallery where Daniel stood. That human there passed the trial of worth, something no being has done in 800 years. He did it not through strength alone, but through redefining what the trial meant. That is what humanity brings to this council. Fresh perspectives, moral courage, and the willingness to challenge old thinking when it no longer serves us. She paused. I vote to admit humanity as a full member species. The vote began one by one. Species declared their positions. The Zentari, yes. The Morpheus Collective, no. Thalassians, yes. The Kroger, yes. Surprisingly, Daniel remembered the warrior he had fought. Maybe that had made an impression. The votes came faster, yes. No, yes, no. Abstained. Daniel stopped counting. It was too stressful beside him. Lauren gripped his hand. It's close, she whispered finally. Only 3 votes remained: the Dravian, the Selkath, and the Zorath ambassador. Thane stood.